Call the Board Governance Committee to order. And the first order of business is roll call, please.
Henry Jones.
Here.
Mona Pascual-Rogers.
Here.
Rob Fector.
Still here.
Lisa Middleton.
Present.
Stacy Olivares. Jason Perez. Ramon Rubalcava.
Okay, thank you. And also note that Mr. Miller, Ms. Ortega, and Ms. Taylor, and Ms. Paquin are also attending the meeting today. I would like to get approval of the September Board Governance Committee timed agenda.
Move approval.
Moved by Mr. Fector, second by Mr. Perez. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, it passes. Thank you. Mr. Matthew Jacobs, the executive report.
Yes, good afternoon, Chair Jones and board members. Over the last several months and even perhaps over a year, the board work streams have been doing the heavy lifting on developing recommendations for changes to the board governance structure and reforms. And as you know, last month we got to the point of actually those recommendations came forward and several of them were adopted. So now, over the next several months, we will, that is, management will be returning with the implementation of a variety of these, or all of the decisions that the board made last month. So today, we have two of those. That is the implementation of the switch to Rosenberg's rules from Robert's rules as the parliamentary authority for the way in which the board manages its meetings, and the change in the structure of the investment committee to mirror the format of the other committees, i.e. Moving it from a committee of the whole to a committee of less than the whole. We will be coming forward in the later months with some of the other changes that were voted on last month. For example, currently the legal office is working with work stream 4 on the code of conduct, and the direction was to work toward a new draft. So we'll be coming back with that, and I imagine in November, and others will come forward over the next months as well. We also have an agenda item today regarding the potential requirement, or actually a requirement that already exists, for board members to report out on their travel. And so that's the basic layout of today and into the future. And with that, I'll conclude my report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jacobs. Okay, the next item on the agenda is approval of the Governance Committee meeting minutes. Do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Fechner, second by Ms. Middleton. Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, hearing none, the item passes. Thank you. Okay, next item is agenda item 5A, proposed changes to board governance documents. Mr. Jacobs.
Yes, thank you. So, as I just mentioned, this is the agenda item that would effectuate the change that was voted on last month. We have prepared redlined versions of both the rules of conduct, the rules for the conduct of meetings, and the board governance policy to conform with and to effectuate the board's decision on this. So there's a variety of changes to both of those documents, many more in the first document than the latter one. We've also taken the liberty of eliminating some passages in those documents that didn't make any sense for a number of different reasons. Either it was bad grammar or it's something that the board just doesn't do anymore. So I'm happy to take any questions about those. The basic concept, though, is pretty straightforward. Let's get rid of all the references to Roberts and the rules that conform with Roberts, replace them with Rosenberg's, and then the Appendix A, which is the little cheat sheet table of rules, has been cut down dramatically to reflect what is in Rosenberg's, but which doesn't appear which appears in Rosenberg's, it doesn't appear in, let me try that again. Which appears in Rosenberg's, but which become unnecessary if we're dispensing with Roberts. And you can see that there's quite a few of them that have been lopped off here. Most of them, in my 5 years as your general counsel, I have never needed to, has never come up. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions about the agenda item in general or any particular proposed changes that we've made to the governing documents.
Okay, seeing no question, this is an action item, so do I have a motion? Moved by Mr. Fechner. Second by Mrs. Pascal Rogers. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. The item passes. Thank you. 5B, proposed changes to board governing documents for the investment committee. Mr. Jacobs.
Very good. And so this is, again, as I mentioned, or similar to the last item, just some changes to the governing document. In this case, the delegation resolution is the operative document that created the IC as a committee of the whole. And so we have made the changes to that document to take it down to a committee of no less than 9 members. And again, happy to take any questions about this one.
Seeing no questions, this is an action item. I need a motion. Moved by Ms. Pascal Rogers, second by Mrs. Oliveira. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed by, nope, Mr. Perez is opposed. The item passes. Okay, thank you very much. We'll go to item 6A, enhanced reporting of board member overseas travel. Ms. Simpson.
Good afternoon, thank you. Anne Simpson, CalPERS staff member. Earlier in the year, Ms. Brown made a suggestion that board members be asked to make report backs when they went on overseas travel. And you'll recall that I mentioned I thought that there was such a requirement already on the books. So we've been rather busy with governance items with this committee in recent months. So we finally thought there was a bit of calm and I could come back and just provide you with a copy of the travel policy, which already governs that requirement to give reports. However, the phrasing of it is when board members travel for educational events. And of course, that would cover education at home as well as abroad. So in terms of this, it's information for the committee to consider whether the current policy meets your needs. And obviously, if there's any improvement on the existing policy, that will be for the committee to propose. And we're very much open to your ideas and suggestions and direction. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Ms. Taylor?
Sorry, you were 0 for 2, and now I did it. I'm sorry.
I was on a roll.
I know you were. I think it's a great idea that we do reporting on our educational and travel, because it can be advantageous to other folks that didn't attend. I know that Ms. Brown went to Wharton with Mr. Perez. I thought that would be great to maybe share a couple of slides that you went over, that kind of stuff. Same with us for PRI. But I also think that's necessary. It's not just overseas travel, and you guys traveled within the United States. I think it's any educational forum. And I don't know how the rest of the board feels about this, but I think our travel should be very open. And if we are traveling, we need to state where we're going, to visit whom, specifically, because I think, as Ms. Brown likes to say, we need to be transparent. So if we're going out to visit constituents, we need to say to whom we're going to, am I going to go visit my constituents with, because I have several different constituents. I have SEIU, I have CFA, so, I would think that would be something that we make sure that we put on our board travel as well. If anybody wants to take that up, feel free. I'm not a board or a committee member, so that was my thought.
And just let me clarify the record. This item is on the agenda as a result of our CSR members who came to us and asked that we put this on the agenda. So I just want to clarify that record. Okay. Mr. Rubalcaba.
Just want a clarification. What's highlighted in the document, that's the language that's currently rules, right?
Correct. The yellow section.
Yeah, the yellow section.
That's correct.
Okay, and right now it only speaks to educational events. So, and it's a written report. So, and the failure to, I just want to make sure everyone understands that the failure to submit the reports means you can result in the denial of future travel requests until such reports are received. So it's pretty high threshold. So I just want to make sure people understand that. I would support that we adhere by our current policy and that we do amend it to speak to any event because I think it should be shared. So that will be my motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, this is an information item. but I
Information
guess-
only? Well, that will be my recommendation
Okay,
that
so
that we do that.
we'll come back to your point, though, in a minute. Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I just want to, I support doing something in regard to this. I really would welcome the opportunity when I travel on the fund's dollars and members' dollars, our dollars, to have an opportunity to share with the rest of you, with our stakeholders, what I've been doing and why it was important and what I've learned. And because I think I have run into this tendency for people to, particularly, for example, I went to a National Association of Corporate Directors educational director development type event, but it happened to be in Florida. And, you know, and I got this, oh, you're having fun in Florida on our money kind of thing. And I'll tell you, it was educational, but I didn't get a chance to have any fun. You know, when you get on a plane and you get off the plane and go to the hotel and wipe the sleep out of your eyes and then go to meetings for 3 days and then get back on a plane, let alone, you know, I looked at the possibility of needing to go to a meeting that was overseas, and it was like, oh my God, this is going to kill me. If I have to, you know, fly 14 hours and get on a cab, go to a hotel, spend 9-10 hours in meetings, eat something at the hotel because I can't go anywhere, do it again 2 days in a row, and then get back on a plane. It just is so daunting. And I know when I got home, I would be facing, oh, you were just over there having fun sightseeing. And it's like, no, I really would welcome the opportunity to share what I learned and why it was important enough for me to consider frankly, putting myself through that on behalf of the members. And so I really think this is something that will help us, both with understanding among our stakeholders and with sharing what we've learned, so we all don't have to go to these things necessarily if we can share what we've learned.
Mr. Fechner, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Mr. Miller on a few aspects, but I would say that, you know, the language that we have now in the gold print is there for a reason. It gives the president some opportunity to evaluate the conferences that we went to, whether or not they're viable for someone else to go to again. And again, to make sure that we're collecting all that. But at the same time, to get back to what Ms. Taylor said, I don't think anybody wants to hear that I went and talked to 15 people in Middletown last week. So I think we need to have some parameters around what we're going to put into this report. But at the same time, the request that came from the audience, our stakeholders, they don't get to read these reports that we submit to the president. So I think that we got to consider creating a placeholder on the board meeting agenda to where board members that have gone to these industry standard conferences, et cetera, get a 5-minute opportunity to explain what they went through, what they spent our dues dollar, our fund money on, and what education opportunities there were at the same time. So I think there needs to be a balance there. I mean, when I do my expense reports, I put on there who I went to speak to, et cetera. So anybody looking at those expenses will know where I went and who I spoke to. But at the same time, I don't think I have to sit here and tell you about going to talk to a group of members. But going to a conference, I absolutely agree.
Okay. Ms. Middleton?
Thank you. And I agree with all the comments that I've heard. I know that we want to get the information out. Last week, I went to speak to the RPA Board of Directors. That was a really great opportunity. I would like to have not an opportunity to fill out a 3-page report on that, but an opportunity to document that this is outreach that was done. So I think we should ask staff to come up with some type of reporting mechanism that is flexible enough to extend from the meeting that we have with a dozen people to the time that we are traveling for a 3 or 4 day educational conference with a variety of classes. And it seems to me that's very doable. But the bottom line to this is all of us are saying we want to make sure that we are very transparent and all of the information regarding our travel is made available.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Perez.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Fechner. I don't want to tie up the meetings any longer by giving oral reports, but if we write a written statement, it doesn't have to be paragraphs, or I'm sorry, it doesn't have to be pages, but paragraphs, and maybe we include that into information item that people can read at a later time, the audience can read at a later time. And as far as listing who you speak with, absolutely, that should be, I thought that's what we're supposed to do. Yeah, we need to list it, but that's on the travel expense forms. I don't know that we need to.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
That's it.
Okay. Mrs. Pascal Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the State Personnel Board, every month we'll have a report that we'll put in the record, but I just give a quick highlight. I think it's good for the people who, if they want to read it online after, but if they want to hear about it, but I think it's, even if it's just a sentence or two on the highlights, I think that's very helpful.
Okay.
So I encourage that kind of feedback for transparency's sake.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. So what we'll do then, taking these suggestions from Mr. Rubalcava, talking about any event, Mr. Fechner, talking about placeholder on the agenda, Ms. Milton about 3 days versus 1 day, and Mr. Jason Perez about written comments, and Mrs. Pascal Rogers' comments. So we will come back, an internal document of how we would manage this as opposed to bringing another board report forward in terms of our operating manual, if you will. And I think that this is another benefit from periodically evaluating ourselves, because we have this document, so it's obviously there needs to be some responsiveness to it, because obviously we have not been completely following it. So the evaluation process has led to this discussion and to lead us to be more responsive to the policies that we already have, such as anytime you travel on CalPERS business, you normally would have to go to our tool and indicate that you're traveling. But normally I think what happens is the board member, if it's local, we go and we submit a travel claim. So we need to set a policy, a practice in place that if you don't use the tool, you don't get reimbursed. So stuff like that we need to do on our own. So that's what I plan to do. Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah, Mark.
Before we end this item, so it's not clear to me what the direction is to the staff. Are you saying you're going to come up with?
No, you.
Important clarification.
Yeah, no, okay, no. Yeah, and we will, we can meet, but I got the tenets of what.
You got the gist?
The gist of
okay, we'll put it together in a new draft, and then so people can respond to what they like and they don't like.
Right, exactly.
Okay, very good.
Okay, sounds good. Okay. Mr. Perez.
I'm sorry, I'm confused now. So does that mean if I go from Corona to Riverside to meet with the crew, I have to submit that through the board travel?
Yes. That's the current policy. It's just that everybody hasn't been following it. You're supposed to go to the travel tool and say you're going from A to B if you're charging CalPERS for the trip.
Sorry, Kayla.
Okay, so I don't know what that is, but anyway.
Because we're going to send a whole bunch
So
of
that's
stuff.
what we're going to enforce. Okay. See no other comments on that. The next item is summary of directions. Mr. Jacobs.
I think we just summarized it.
Okay.
It's just on that last item. We didn't have anything on the other items. So
Okay, thank you.
we're good.
Okay, we have a couple of requests to speak, Mr. Fontaine and Ms. Lee, on this items. If you can come down, and the mics will come on, and you will have 3 minutes to make your comments and identify yourself and your organization.
Good afternoon, board members. I'm Jerry Fontaine, Chief Financial Officer for the California State Retirees. I applaud the comments that the board has made here. I had an opportunity to speak to the board on this subject a while back, and it came about through a conversation I had with Mr. Jones. We had talked about some of his travels and the business he conducted overseas, and I found it extremely interesting of what he had done. I found it very enlightening as to what goes on behind the scenes with our board members, and it was very, very beneficial to me, and it gave me a broader scope of understanding of what the board does. I believe it will have a good effect on us stakeholders, knowing what you're doing in our behalf. So again, I applaud the board's conversation in this matter and carrying it forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Oh, if I may add to that, Mr. Miller, I understand your position totally, although on a very smaller scale. As the Chief Financial Officer for California State Retirees, we have 26 chapters throughout the state, and so far this year I've logged 4 months in a Hilton's property somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fontaine.
Hi, my name is Jackie Lee, and I'm a CTA liaison. So it's very important to me to go ahead and have some kind of reporting. I don't think that it is only on educational travel that you need to report. I really think that any travel needs to be reported to. It doesn't have to be huge. Part of CTA board, they list on a monthly basis after their meetings, they will have their itinerary, what they've done. I mean, they would put the date and they would say, I was at this chapter, at this service central council, and so on. Quarterly, well, first of all, as a liaison, I have to report after every board meeting to CTA to indicate what has transpired here. I will not get paid my travel if I don't report. So it's very important for me to be present and to relate what transpired here. CTA has board activities that they go ahead and indicate, and I don't need the names of the people that you have met with, truly. I mean, it should be a huge list. It's just, if you're meeting in Riverside, you know, I have indicated, you know, that I have been here at the board meeting, or I come to the stakeholder meetings, and I report on what has transpired here. That's for educational purposes, CTA is interested. And so I really appreciate the fact that you are going to be reporting, but not only the educational part, meetings, but if you're traveling either abroad or here in the United States, please let us know. If it is electronic, it's fine. You know, we all get emails. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Seeing no requests to speak from committee members, this meeting is adjourned.